Hey there, it's Anonymous T, where we spill the tea anonymously. Hello, 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 everyone. Hello, YouTubers. Hope you guys are all having an amazing day. Today, we're talking Beyonce. You guys, we were talking about Beyonce. Was she really snubbed for the Album of the Year award at last night's Grammys? You guys, we're gonna get into it. You guys, as you know, those of you who've been rocking with me, I'm always gonna keep it a buck with you. I'm always going to be unbiased. I'm always gonna look at things objectively and look at the behavior, look at how certain things have went down. As I prepare for why I feel Beyonce has not won Album of the Year, you guys. And she does, in fact, though, with winning 4 Grammys last night, does become the most awarded Grammy artist ever in the entire history of the Grammys, you guys. So that means Beyonce has more Grammys than Michael Jackson, than Prince, than Whitney Houston, than Stevie Wonder, than Mariah Carey, than Quincy Jones, than Tina Turner, Diana Ross, who lost again last night. I believe she still doesn't have a Grammy. And we need to talk about it, you guys. We need to talk about it because what does it really mean, right? What does it really mean that some of our legends, because I grew up around, when Michael Jackson and Prince and, Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey, they were all at the peaks of their careers, and Janet Jackson, they were all at the peaks of their careers, you guys. So it was a different level of competition when it came to these award shows, and half of these award shows, didn't even have half of these categories that they have now for some of these Grammys. And I think what some of you guys fail to realize, a lot of these additional R&B categories in part are responsible because of Beyonce's father, Matthew Knowles, right? But it's a catch-22, right? Before we get into the Album of the Year stuff, right? Because before we can have the conversation about whether or not Beyonce deserved to win Album of the Year for specifically Renaissance, we need to have the conversation about how much anytime Beyonce is nominated in any of these other categories for R&B, pop, dance, whatever, it's pretty much a guarantee or foregone conclusion she's likely going to win, even if she didn't have the best song or the best album or the best selling album in that category. Because I felt that there were some people that were snubbed, you guys. I don't know, like Mary J. Blige. I thought she had a good album. You know what I mean? And then if we're talking snubs, didn't Doja Cat have 7 nominations? Where's her Grammys at for last night's show? And I think Adele had a lot of nominations as well and only went away with 1, which is abnormal for Adele. And I think Adele, the reason she lost is more for personal reasons and actually has nothing to do with her actual sales. I think just the unprofessionalism of all the drama with the Las Vegas residency at Caesars and how she wanted to blame it on production and blame it on COVID when the reality was it was problems with her boyfriend, that she basically went back to LA because she was worried about him cheating on her, which, if you don't know, she's dating Rich Paul, LeBron's best friend. And I think that just turned some people off because a lot of these production people, they work with several A-listers for these concerts, you guys. They're not just pigeonholed to one artist. So you're affecting somebody else's income and, their livelihood by just abruptly canceling a residency like that. Not to mention all the people all over the world who traveled to Vegas to see you, and you canceled abruptly like that, and there's nothing they can do, right? But that's a whole separate conversation, right? But back to Beyonce, I think people are forgetting how many Black artists, specifically Black female artists, have not benefited as a result of Beyonce being in the same categories as that for these Grammy Awards. And you could argue they may have had actually a better song. They may have actually had a more successful song. They may have actually had a better album than Beyonce. But we don't want to have that conversation, right? We only want to focus on Album of the Year, right? But what about in 2015 at the height of Selma, you guys, and how critically acclaimed it was, and how Beyonce edged out Lettucey, her own song that she performs in the movie, to perform, with John Legend in Common, and John Legend saying, "You don't say no to Beyonce." And Lettucey saying, "I was blindsided. I had no idea. It was news to me. I thought I was going to have my platform and perform at the Grammy." And what about SZA, who's spending so many weeks at #1? And we're not talking about these artists, you guys, that are making an impact, that are making R&B and making music relevant again, because we have completely pigeonholed everything to Beyonce or bust. And specifically Twitter has completely made this completely personal for no reason. When there was a time when the Grammys weren't even televising the majority of these Black awards, you guys. And there was a time when, you know, you had to fight for Black people to even win these awards. But the way some people are acting, they're acting as if a Black artist has never won Album of the Year, which is completely false, you guys. Like, and that's what I mean when some people do not, you know, think everything through. Like, Michael Jackson has won Album of the Year, Stevie Wonder has won Album of the Year 3 times, Quincy Jones has won Album of the Year, Lionel Richie, even last year, John Baptiste won Album of the Year. Outkast has won Album of the Year. Like, there's been several artists who've won Album of the Year. Obviously, in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to look like a lot in the history of the Grammys, but this is why we always say to support our own shows, support the NAACP Awards, support the Soul Train Awards, support the BET Awards. But what happens is some of these A-listers think they're too good to show up for these shows, but they beg the Grammys, they beg the Oscars to give them these big, and so they don't mind awarding Beyonce, you know, the most decorated Grammy Award winner ever, the most wins, because the bulk of the awards are in the R&B categories and some of the pop categories. But we're not going to acknowledge you for Album of the Year. And I think a couple issues have taken place, you guys, right? I think one, basically from what I gathered from the interviews from people who were anonymous votes, some people are misinterpreting what some of the quotes are saying and trying to make it into a race issue. And it actually is not a race issue, right? Because if we were just going strictly off of sales and everything else, technically it just should have been really a battle between, really Bad Bunny should have won, because technically they had the most sales all year. They had over like 1 billion streams. They were breaking so many records, had so much of a cultural impact. Their songs were everywhere. And if you weren't going to award Bad Bunny, then really you have Harry Styles, but you know, versus Adele. And I personally listened to Adele's album, and I thought actually she had a great album. And I actually was surprised that she only won 1 Grammy last night. And the only thing I can think is, like I said, the personal reasons and the unprofessionalism is what did. But as it pertains to Beyonce, a lot of the voters said that yes, Beyonce, every rollout as of late, she's been doing this in self-titled, you know, it's always a big spectacle. It's all this initial hype with Beyonce, but they feel like things are coming off behind the scenes pretentious. And people try to misinterpret that and not see it for what they were trying to say. And what they were trying to say, if you read between the lines, was basically people are feeling pressure to just give Beyonce Album of the Year for the simple fact she's Beyonce and not actually critiquing her body of to see if her album compared to some of these other albums truly deserved Album of the Year. And I can argue, you guys, because this is Beyonce's worst selling solo album. This is the worst promotion that she's done out of all of her albums, you guys. And I want to preface this for saying this, right? Before I truly say what I need to say. I've been to pretty much every single Beyonce tour, I think with the exception of maybe one or two. I've been to every Beyonce tour that she's had, you guys. So this is not coming from somebody who, a quote-unquote Beyonce hater or somebody who doesn't know her music or know her discography or anything like that. No, this is somebody who knows Beyonce and knows what she's capable of, right? And knows the type of work she can put out. And for me personally, I feel that Dangerously in Love is her best album, followed up by the album 4. And after that, it's kind of debatable. Maybe self-titled, and then maybe Lemonade, and then maybe Renaissance. I don't feel Lemonade and Renaissance. I feel like that it, you know, it was hyped. It was amazing PR strategies for both, right? Specifically for Lemonade, because you had a whole rollout on HBO of a whole visual album, and you may not necessarily have liked all the songs, but you basically left the documentary thinking, okay, is Beyonce about to divorce Jay-Z? And then you follow that up with On the Run tour. Excellent marketing strategy, right? Because basically you're rushing to find out, okay, what is up with this Lemonade? What is going on with Beyonce and Jay-Z? Is she on the run from him like like, what is happening? Excellent marketing strategy for that whole rollout, but I have a homework assignment for you guys. And you can either do it while you're watching this video now, or you can do it afterwards. And that is to go to your streaming app, whether it is Apple Music, Tidal, Spotify, whatever you are using to stream your music, and don't go to your personal library of your Beyonce songs. I want you to actually search Beyonce in the database as an artist to see the top songs that everyone is streaming globally as it pertains to Beyonce, because I want to make a point here. And I am going to tell you the list of the top songs that are streaming for Beyonce as of today, February 6th, so that without the features like without Savage, without Nicki Minaj, Feeling Myself, without the duet with Ed Sheeran, I am going to tell you what Beyonce's top stream songs are. All right, number 1, Crazy in Love. Number 2, Cuff It. Number 3, Irreplaceable. Number 4, Halo. Number 5, Love on Top. Number 6, Best Thing I Never Had. Number 7, Dance for You. Number 8, Break My Soul. Number 9, Drunk in Love. And 10, Me, Myself, and I, you guys. So that's what, 2 songs off of her first album that are in the top 10, 1 song off of B-Day, which is the best song in my opinion, Irreplaceable, and 3 songs off of 4, which I said after the first album, Beyonce's album Dangerously in Love, that the second best album she had out of the 6 albums were in fact the album 4. And I say this to make a point, and this is what's happened ever since the rollout of Self-Titled, as it's been kind of this, hey, I'm Beyonce, I'm just gonna win it because I'm Beyonce, right? And I don't have to do anything else. And that's great to have that mentality. Hey, you've earned your icon status. Nobody's taking that away. But when you actually peel back the layers of some of this music, it's not the same quality as her earlier stuff. And I can argue some of the Destiny's Child stuff is better than some of Beyonce's recent solo albums, you guys. Collectively, I can listen to Dangerously in Love basically all the way through, no skips. I can't say that for other Beyonce solo albums, you guys. The only one that's other close to that is, I would say, the 4 album. And while I like some of the songs from Self-Titled, there's other songs I can do without. And if, let's say for instance, it was Self-Titled, Lemonade, and Renaissance that were all nominated for Album of the Year, which one would I think would deserve it, quote unquote deserve it? I would say Self-Titled. I would argue, even though I still felt that Lemonade wasn't really crazy about it, but I would still argue that Lemonade deserved Album of the Year over Renaissance. If we're really keeping it, but Renaissance is Beyonce's worst selling album, you guys. It literally came and went. And really what kept it afloat, what kept the hype going, was the TikTok challenges of Break My Soul and Cuff It. And there's some people to this day, you guys, who still haven't even listened to the full version of Cuff It and only know the portion that's played via TikTok and only know the version of Cuff It of the remix, the TikTok remix of Twista's Wetter, right? So I'm saying all this to say for a reason, you guys. Beyonce has the caliber to put out the music that made Dangerously in Love so successful, you guys. She has the caliber to do that. What happened once she hit Self-Titled was she decided to follow a trend, right? And Usher did the same thing but a different genre. He decided to follow the EDM trend, right? Beyonce decided to follow the trap music, singing R&B trend, right? And take other artists' throwaway tracks or whatever, right? And had songs where she was sounding like Future and sounding like all these other rappers and wasn't being true to Beyonce. And I felt that that hurt her. And that's why a lot of people, they listen to Beyonce's first album, they stream her first album, and they stream 4. Because vocally, that is where Beyonce is at her best. She is working with the best producers, the best writers for those albums, you guys. And it's not to take anything away from Beyonce's accomplishment, you guys, but I think sometimes people need to take off the Stan gear, take off the Beehive gear, and really assess it for what it is for an objective music fan, you guys. And really ask yourself, is Renaissance Beyonce's best body of work? Why did Renaissance come and go as quickly as it did? Why is Beyonce's Renaissance album not being streamed on the level that Beyonce's older music is? Why is Dangerously in Love album, her first solo album, her Destiny's Child stuff, and the album 4 streaming more than any of Beyonce's recent work? And really the main thing from Self-Titled that's, you know, being streamed is for the most part Drunk in Love and Partition. Ask yourself that, you guys. Ask yourself. That's because you stream the music that you want to hear. You stream the music that's memorable to you. You may fall for the initial hype of these albums because Beyonce doesn't do traditional rollouts anymore. She just drops it and expects you to buy it, right? And I know some of you are going to be in the comments, but there's so much of a waiting list for her tour. That's a totally different ballgame. Totally different ballgame. When you have reached a certain status and people know what you're capable of as a performer, they're going to come out and see you no matter what, whether you sold 0 copies or 1 million copies. That's how it works. Whether you're a Beyonce fan, whether you are a Diana Ross fan, an Anita Baker fan, a Janet Jackson fan, whoever you're a fan of, once they announce the tour, if you're a fan, Sade, you're getting tickets whether or not they have an album out, right? Like I said, there was a demand, I believe one of Beyonce's tours, which she did, I think it was the Miss Carter tour, where she had a tour where she was supposed to technically release her album. She was supposed to release the album for that tour, but ended up releasing it after the fact and then went into the On the Run tour, you guys, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be an album out for you to support your favorite artists, right? But the demand is because Beyonce hasn't performed in several years due to COVID, you guys. So the demand is always going to be there because people know what they're going to be expecting at a Beyonce concert if you've been to at least one of them or seen one of her concert specials on cable. So that is completely separate from whether or not Renaissance is successful or whether or not Renaissance was critically acclaimed. And if you review a lot of these year-in charts, it was not, you know, at the top of everyone's list, you guys. It was barely in the top 20. So, and had it not been for Taylor Swift, you know, putting out her album past the deadline, we'd be having a completely conversation of Beyonce only winning, you know, in certain categories that she may have not even taken home 4 Grammys today. So that's like a whole nother conversation to be had, right? That she possibly wouldn't have even been nominated for some of these big award categories, such as, you know, Album of the Year and everything else. That's a whole nother conversation we could have been having. So again, we can appreciate and give Beyonce her flowers for what she's accomplished in the music industry, right? But I am not going to be a fake fan or a fake person and just hype up everything Beyonce does because it's Beyonce, you guys. I want the same level of quality, the same level of work ethic that Beyonce put into the Dangerously in Love album and the 4 album. That's what I'm expecting when I hear a Beyonce record. And what has happened with these last 3 drops, you know, of her solo work, it's had an initial hype, but then when you go back and listen to the album, you're kind of like, I maybe really only like a couple songs. Maybe there's really only a couple songs I can maybe listen to on a regular basis. And then you go back to her old stuff, like what is going to be the case on most of these streaming platforms, you guys. And that's what I mean. There's no longevity for a lot of these albums that have come out recently from Beyonce. They come and go from these charts, you guys, because after the initial fanfare wears off, people stop streaming it and they go back to streaming Beyonce's old music, which can only lead to one thing, which means people prefer older Beyonce's music and people prefer Destiny's Child Beyonce. And that's okay. It's okay to say that. It's not a knock on Beyonce, but it's to say we want the old Beyonce back. We want the Beyonce who you're going to give us a solid R&B album. You're going to give us the collabs that we want. You and Missy Elliott don't miss on a collab together. Just like how Missy doesn't miss anytime she collabs with Fantasia. There's certain artists, when you collab and you make a hit, it's golden. Even Break My Soul, like when Beyonce teamed back up with The Dream. Whenever she works with The Dream, they always have a hit. They always have a #1 hit, right? I personally didn't care for Break My Soul, but it was a hit. It went #1, right? But that's the kind of caliber I'm expecting for Beyonce, right? And she wanted to do this dance album. She wanted to do, you know, the disco album. Remember back when she did the Austin Powers movie? And remember she completely scrapped that, right? Completely scrapped that and did her best album, right? With Dangerously in Love. And so now here we are 20 plus years later and she finally has that disco album she always wanted to put out. But guess what? It's also her worst selling. And there's no visuals. There is no promotion for it. There is nothing. The only promotion you're getting is this tour, right? right? And even that is to be determined on how many songs from the album she's actually going to perform on it. Because that's the other piece too with Beyonce, is that some of these tours or some of these albums that she knows didn't do as well, she doesn't perform as many songs from those albums. If you notice, a lot of what she does is she'll always perform her old stuff that people want to hear. She'll perform her #1 hits, of course, and then she'll, you know, sneak in a whole bunch of B-side tracks that she always likes to perform that didn't do well on the charts or whatever, right? And that's what you're going to get. And she puts on a good show. Nobody's taking that away. Nobody's taking away Beyonce's success, you guys. But I think certain artists, when they reach a certain level of success, they think that they can just put out anything and that people are going to buy it and people are going to support it, and that's going to be the end of it. And we have to have an honest conversation about some artists, you know, not putting in the same quality or not putting out the same type of music as they were before. And it's different, and it's fine to experiment with different genres. Nobody's saying you can't do that, right? Beyonce's done well experimenting with different genres, right? But I'm talking about the caliber of what the cohesiveness of the Dangerously in Love album was, the cohesiveness of what the 4 album was, is what I'm expecting from a Beyonce album. And I have not been able to say since 4 that I have gotten that level of a Beyonce album where I felt like, oh my God, I got to go back and listen to every single track on that album. Because that's what you want to feel when you actually truly are a fan of somebody and they actually have the discography to match. Like Michael Jackson, everybody has a signature album, right? Or a signature song. What is Beyonce's, right? Is it the Dangerously in Love album? Is it Crazy in Love? What is Beyonce's signature? Michael Jackson has Thriller. You can even argue Off the Wall or the Dangerous album. Prince has Purple Rain. Right? Janet Jackson, her Coming Out, the Control album. Or some people argue the Janet album because, again, she also transformed as well. The Rhythm Nation album. You see what I mean? That is iconic. Mariah Carey, The Emancipation of Mimi. The Daydream album, where she started to experiment and doing remixes with different R&B artists and things. You see what I'm saying, you guys? Whitney Houston, her iconic moments, and the Bodyguard soundtrack to where she just completely bodied it. That is what we want when you're talking about a certain level of status, where you can look back at their discography and every single album basically is a banger. I can't say that for Beyonce. So that, I feel, is what is holding her back from winning Album of the Year. I feel like when she really takes a step back and really looks at her body of work, and if she can put out another album like 4 or another album like that Dangerously in Love album, I think she would win Album of the Year, you guys. I truly believe that, honestly. I truly believe the issue is the body of work and how the politicking behind the scenes for Album of the Year is going, that's turning off the voters. And the reaction from some of her fans who have this entitlement. There's literally a petition, you guys, to literally hand Beyonce the Album of the Year award Grammy just because she's Beyonce. And that's not going to cut it, you guys. We should not want, you know, basically given anything, right? Or just promised anything just because of who your name is. Right? Everything should be worked for. Everything should be earned. You shouldn't be given a pity award, right? But it should be earned. You want to win Album for the Year for an album that actually deserves it, right? You don't want to win it just because you've lost it, you know, several years in a row, and finally they give it to you for an album that was like one of your worst albums that you did, your worst performing albums. You don't want that, right? So there's that. I apologize, this is a very long video. I didn't intend for it to be this long, but I really just wanted to get out my points as far as why I felt Beyonce lost Album of the Year. And yes, there's racism and other issues that are associated with the Grammys. but also Beyonce technically has been basically guaranteed to win in every R&B category since the beginning of time. Anytime she's nominated in those categories, regardless if it was the best song or the most successful song or album anyways, she's guaranteed a lock for those R&B categories, right? And so that's where, you know, again, if she could just put out that 4 album, that Dangerously in Love album once more and give us those collabs that we want, right? Where she was collabing with Big Boy, where she was collabing with the greats, you guys. Sean Paul. Like, just give us an album like that, another album like that, and I guarantee you guys, I guarantee you she would have won Album of the Year. Like, it's not rocket science why she's not winning, you guys. But I think people are taking it personal and people are looking at it from the wrong angles, right? And regardless whether or not you like Harry Styles, whether or not you like Adele, they both had big years, as well as Bad Bunny too, right? And even Harry Styles and Adele edged out Beyonce, and Bad Bunny edged out Beyonce in streaming and everything, in pure sales and everything. Had it not been for streaming, Beyonce wouldn't have even gone platinum for Renaissance, you guys, because she only has 337,000 in sales, which is her worst solo album, not counting, you know, the album she did with Jay and her Lion King soundtrack album. So I say all of that to say, you guys, we have to peel back some of the layers as to why Beyonce really lost. And it is nothing personal. It's nothing racist. It's nothing, you know, people are trying to attack it from different things when it's really fundamental. It is really fundamental, right? But there's even artists like Usher and Alicia Keys who should have won Album of the Year for their stuff. And their stuff went diamond. And they didn't win. Right? Prince. Purple Rain, his best-selling album, didn't win Album of the Year, you guys. Make it make sense. Had a hit movie, won an Oscar for the song, and nothing. And no best album of the year for Prince. So it's not always a guarantee just because of who you are as an artist. But even with that being said, I expected Beyonce to come back harder than Lemonade. I expected Beyonce to come back and put back a better effort than Lemonade, you guys. And that hasn't happened, right? I'm still expecting my 4 album. I'm still expecting another album that's on the level of Dangerously in Love. And until that happens, I can't make the argument that, oh my gosh, Beyonce was snubbed for Album of the Year. I can't do it. I'm sorry. And this is somebody who's been to several Beyonce concerts, who listens to Beyonce all the time. But I listen to her old stuff. I don't listen to her recent stuff. And that's on period, right? Because I want old Beyonce back. Like, I want that style of music, right? You don't have to follow the wave. You don't have to follow the trend. You can still move to the beat of your own drum and be successful. So there's that. So let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments. Please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you're notified the moment I post new content on my channel. And with that being said, I'll talk to you guys again very soon.